The atmosphere inside the Blackwood Grand Hall changed the moment the silver flames turned blue. At first, only a few wolves noticed. A servant near the eastern pillars froze while staring at the enormous ceremonial torches lining the palace walls. One by one, the flames shifted unnaturally beneath the crystal chandeliers overhead, transforming from gold into glowing lunar fire that illuminated the hall with cold silver light. Then the temperature dropped. A sharp breath swept through the gathering as ancient energy rolled invisibly across the room, powerful enough to silence every whispered conversation instantly. Selena felt it immediately. The mark beneath her wrist burned hotter than ever before, not painfully, like recognition. The palace itself seemed to awaken around her. Massive stone pillars carved with forgotten wolf symbols began glowing faintly beneath centuries of dust. Ancient markings hidden within the marble floors slowly illuminated beneath her feet, while moonlight poured unnaturally through the towering windows despite heavy storm clouds covering the night sky moments earlier. Fear spread quietly through the gathering. Not ordinary fear, reverence. Several elders seated near the ceremonial platform suddenly rose to their feet in visible shock. One dropped his cane entirely. Another whispered an old prayer beneath trembling breath. Kael's silver eyes narrowed slightly beside Selena. Not surprised, expectant, as though he had been waiting for this moment. Damon looked between the glowing hall and Selena with growing disbelief tightening across his face. His wolf had become restless beneath his skin now, packing violently against instincts it could not fully understand. Because the power surrounding Selena no longer felt like ordinary wolf energy. It felt divine. Ancient enough to command submission naturally. Vanessa stepped backward slowly. Panic widened inside her eyes as the silver light reflecting around the hall intensified with every passing second. She whispered faintly. Selena barely heard her. Something strange was happening inside her chest, voices not spoken aloud, ancient whispers echoing faintly through her soul like distant memories clawing toward the surface. Daughter of the moon, heir of silver blood, the last lunar queen. The words flooded through her mind in fragments, confusing, overwhelming. The silver mark beneath her wrist suddenly blazed with light powerful enough to illuminate the entire hall. Gasps erupted instantly throughout the gathering. The ancient symbol spread glowing patterns across Selena's skin before stopping just beneath her collarbone where moonlit markings shimmered like living stars against her flesh. Every elder inside the hall froze completely. Then Elder Miriam stepped forward slowly. Tears filled the old woman's eyes. "It cannot be," she whispered shakily. Another elder moved beside her quickly, older, frail, one of the final surviving historians from the Eastern Territories. He stared at Selena as though witnessing prophecy rise from the dead before his eyes. Then suddenly he dropped to his knees. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. Every wolf turned toward him in stunned silence. "Queen," the elderly man whispered hoarsely. The entire room stopped breathing. Vanessa's face turned completely pale. Damon stared in disbelief. Selena herself looked stunned. "What did you say?" Damon demanded sharply. But the elder barely acknowledged him. His eyes remained fixed entirely on Selena while emotion shook visibly through his aging body. "The lunar bloodline," he whispered. After all these centuries, more elders slowly approached now, one after another. And to the horror of everyone inside the gathering, they all knelt, every single one. The palace hall erupted into chaos immediately. Impossible. No alpha kneeled publicly unless facing royal blood. And royal bloodlines vanished generations ago during the ancient wolf wars. At least, that was what every kingdom believed. Damon stepped forward aggressively. "What is the meaning of this?" Elder Miriam finally lifted her gaze toward the stunned Blackwood Alpha. "The meaning," she said quietly, "is that your kingdom exiled the last descendant of the moon goddess herself." The words struck the hall with devastating force. Silence followed instantly afterward, heavy, disbelieving. Then whispers exploded everywhere at once. "The moon goddess, royal bloodline, she is descended from the lunar queens. That power," Vanessa staggered backward visibly. She breathed. "No, that is impossible." The elders ignored her entirely. Another ancient leader stepped forward slowly carrying a silver staff carved with forgotten symbols. His hands trembled while staring at Selena. "I saw the markings once before as a child," he whispered emotionally. Inside the forbidden archives beneath the Eastern Kingdom, his voice echoed throughout the silent hall. The lunar bloodline was never destroyed. The old man lowered his head deeply before continuing. They were hidden. Selena's pulse thundered violently inside her chest. None of this felt real. Kael stepped beside her calmly, protectively. Yet even he looked intensely focused now, as though the truth unfolding before the kingdom carried consequences far greater than politics alone. The elder raised his trembling hand toward Selena. "The moon goddess created the lunar queens to maintain balance between wolf kingdoms," he explained. "Not merely rulers," voice lowered reverently, "protectors chosen by the moon itself." Silver flames danced violently around the hall. The storm outside intensified, and somehow every wolf inside the gathering instinctively understood the terrifying truth before it was spoken aloud. Selena was never weak. She had been suppressed, hidden, buried beneath years of manipulation and emotional destruction, until fate finally awakened what ancient blood carried within her all along. The elder's eyes filled with tears. "For generations we believed the final lunar heir perished during the Northern Purge," looked at Selena with overwhelming emotion. "You survived." The silver energy surrounding Selena pulsed softly through the hall, no longer unstable, no longer frightening, majestic. The atmosphere itself bent around her naturally now. Even the palace walls seemed to recognize her presence. Damon's breathing became uneven. Every memory crashed through him at once. The rejection ceremony, the humiliation, the exile. He publicly destroyed the one woman born to become the strongest Luna in generations. Worse, his wolf knew it now. Pain ripped violently through Damon's chest as instinct finally fully understood what fate had placed before him all those years. Not weakness, royal blood, sacred power, a destined queen. And he rejected her beneath the blood moon before the entire kingdom. The realization nearly broke him. Vanessa noticed Damon's expression immediately. True panic flooded her face, because she could see it happening. The regret, the obsession. The horrifying realization growing inside Damon's eyes, while staring at Selena like a man witnessing the collapse of his own future. Then the final elder stepped forward, the oldest wolf in the room, blind with age, yet somehow he walked directly toward Selena without hesitation before lowering himself painfully onto one knee. "The moon goddess has restored her bloodline," he declared loudly. His voice echoed through every corner of the palace hall. "Before us stands the strongest lunar heir seen in centuries." The silver flames exploded higher instantly. Power surged violently through the chamber. Then every wolf inside the gathering felt it simultaneously. An overwhelming pressure descended upon the hall, ancient, royal, absolute. Instinct took over. One by one warriors began kneeling. Then nobles. Then alphas from neighboring territories. Even powerful wolves struggled, resisting the force radiating naturally from Selena's awakened bloodline. The sound of knees striking marble echoed endlessly through the hall. Damon remained standing only briefly before his wolf forced submission violently through his body. His knees hit the floor hard. Shock spread across his face instantly, because no alpha had ever forced him to kneel before, not even Kael. Yet Selena's presence alone commanded it naturally. Vanessa looked around wildly in horror. The entire room bowed before her sister, the same sister she mocked, manipulated, destroyed. Now kneeling wolves filled the grand hall as silver moonlight flooded the kingdom around them. At the center of it all stood Selena, motionless, radiant, powerful enough to silence generations of doubt with her mere existence. And beside her, Kael finally lowered his head slightly, not in submission, in recognition. Because the woman standing beside him was no longer simply a future Luna. She was the return of an ancient dynasty, the last daughter of the moon goddess. And the kingdoms had finally remembered who she truly was. The silence after the kneeling began felt heavier than war. No music remained inside the Blackwood Grand Hall. No whispered conversations. No movement beyond the flickering silver flames surrounding the massive chamber. Hundreds of wolves remained lowered before Selena, while moonlight poured through towering crystal windows high above the palace walls. The glowing lunar symbols beneath the marble floor pulsed softly beneath her feet, as though the kingdom itself acknowledged her existence at last. And in the center of it all Damon Blackwood knelt. The same alpha who once stood proudly beneath the blood moon declaring Selena unworthy now struggled breathing beneath the unbearable weight of truth crushing through his chest. His hands trembled slightly against the cold marble floor, not from fear of her power, from regret, raw, violent, unescapable. Every memory replayed endlessly inside his mind with horrifying clarity. Selena standing alone during training while warriors mocked her failures. Selena smiling weakly whenever he offered the smallest fragment of attention. Selena trying desperately to earn affection from a man already blinded by pride and manipulation. And worst of all, the rejection ceremony. The way her face collapsed when he chose Vanessa publicly. The sound of the mate bond breaking. At the time Damon convinced himself he felt relief. Now he understood the truth. It was not relief, it was loss. And he had been slowly dying from it ever since. The silver aura surrounding Selena moved gently throughout the hall while ancient energy pressed against every wolf present like moonlight wrapped in power. Yet despite the overwhelming force radiating from her awakened bloodline she remained calm, controlled. The frightened Omega who once cried alone in silence no longer existed. Damon looked up slowly toward her, and something inside him shattered completely. Because Selena no longer looked at him with love, not even hatred, just distance. Like he belonged to a life she already survived. That realization nearly destroyed him. Vanessa noticed every second of it. Her breathing had become uneven long ago, though she fought desperately to maintain composure while kneeling beside Damon near the throne platform. Fear hollowed visibly beneath her expression now, while silver moonlight reflected against skin gone pale with panic. Everything was collapsing. Every lie, every manipulation, every carefully constructed victory. Vanessa spent years convincing herself Selena was weak, because accepting the truth would have been unbearable. Selena was never weak. She was simply kinder. And kindness is often mistaken for weakness by cruel people. Now the entire kingdom finally saw the difference. Vanessa looked around the hall frantically. Warriors who once admired her avoided eye contact completely. The noblewomen whispering beside the palace pillars now stared at Selena with fascination instead of jealousy. Even the elders who supported Vanessa during the exile looked ashamed. The atmosphere had changed completely, and Vanessa understood something horrifying. If Selena wanted revenge, no one would stop her. The realization wrapped cold fingers around Vanessa's throat. Then Damon slowly rose from one knee. The movement instantly drew attention throughout the hall. Kael's silver eyes narrowed slightly beside Selena, though the northern alpha remained perfectly calm. His hand rested subtly near Selena's back again, protective without overshadowing her presence. Always guarding, always watching. Damon noticed that too, and pain twisted deeper inside his chest, because Kael protected Selena naturally in ways Damon never once did, not for appearances, not for political advantage, because Selena mattered to him. The realization poisoned every remaining piece of Damon's pride. He stared at Selena for several long seconds while emotion darkened visibly across his face. Then finally, his voice broke the silence, quiet, hoarse, filled with devastation. "I rejected my true queen." The words echoed through the grand hall like a curse. Gasps spread instantly throughout the gathering. Several elders lowered their heads sadly while whispers exploded among the kneeling wolves surrounding the throne platform. Vanessa's heart nearly stopped. No, he could not say things like that publicly. Not now, not in front of everyone. Panic surged violently through her body as she grabbed Damon's arm instinctively. "Damon," she whispered sharply, desperation slipping into her voice. "You are confused." Damon barely seemed aware she touched him. His eyes remained fixed entirely on Selena. And for the first time since Vanessa met him, he looked broken, not angry, not prideful, broken. Because Damon finally understood the true magnitude of his mistake. He did not merely reject a mate. He rejected the woman fate itself chose to stand above kingdoms. The woman destined to become the strongest Luna in generations. The woman who once loved him completely before he shattered her heart before an entire pack. Vanessa's chest tightened painfully. Fear flooded deeper through her veins with every passing second, because Damon was no longer hiding his regret, and regret is dangerous when mixed with obsession. Selena stood motionless beneath the silver light filling the hall while the atmosphere around her remained impossibly calm. Yet inside Vanessa's growing panic, that calmness felt more terrifying than rage ever could. Why was Selena not reacting emotionally? Why was she not humiliating them? Why was she simply watching? Vanessa suddenly realized the answer. Because Selena no longer needed their validation. That truth frightened her more than anything else. A cold tremor moved through Vanessa's body. She remembered every cruel whisper, every false accusation, every fake smile she offered while slowly destroying Selena's life piece by piece. At the time it felt easy, safe. Now those memories felt like stepping willingly toward her own execution. The silver flames surrounding the hall suddenly flickered harder. Wind swept violently through the palace despite closed doors. Several elders exchanged uneasy glances immediately. Something else was happening, something bigger than political humiliation. Kael sensed it first. His expression darkened slightly while his gaze lifted toward the massive moonlit windows high above the hall. Selena felt it moments later. The mark beneath her wrist burned sharply, not pain, warning. Ancient instincts stirred violently beneath her skin. Then suddenly, every flame inside the hall extinguished at once. Darkness swallowed the kingdom. Gasps erupted immediately. Panic spread through the gathering while only silver moonlight remained illuminating the enormous chamber. And in that unnatural silence, a deep growl echoed somewhere beyond the palace walls, not ordinary, massive, ancient enough to shake the marble beneath everyone's feet. Kael's expression changed instantly. For the first time, all-night real alarm flashed through his silver eyes. Then the palace doors exploded open. The moment the palace doors exploded open, every warrior inside the Blackwood Grand Hall reached for their weapons instinctively. Cold wind roared violently through the chamber, extinguishing half the silver flames still burning along the ancient walls. Curtains snapped wildly beneath the storm pouring into the palace, while terrified whispers spread through the gathering like wildfire. Something enormous approached. Heavy footsteps echoed beyond the entrance, slow, deliberate. Each step shook the marble floor hard enough to rattle crystal chandeliers overhead. Vanessa's breathing became sharp beside Damon while panic spread visibly across her face. Selena remained still, but the glowing mark beneath her wrist burned intensely now. Silver light pulsing softly beneath her skin like recognition awakening once again. Kael stepped slightly in front of her, protective instinct, immediate, dangerous. Then the shadows near the shattered palace entrance slowly parted. An enormous wolf entered the hall. Gasps erupted instantly. The creature towered above ordinary wolves, its silver-black fur shimmering unnaturally beneath the moonlight flooding through the broken doors. Ancient scars covered its massive body while glowing eyes swept across the gathering with terrifying intelligence. Several alphas immediately lowered their heads, not from fear alone. Respect. The wolf stopped near the center of the hall before transforming slowly into human form beneath swirling silver energy. An older man emerged from the light, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in dark ceremonial robes marked with ancient lunar symbols long forgotten by most kingdoms. The elders froze immediately. Then Elder Miriam whispered shakily. The Guardian spread violently through the hall. Even Kael's expression tightened with recognition. Because only ancient stories spoke of the lunar guardians, protectors sworn directly to the moon goddess bloodline centuries ago before the royal lineage vanished. The silver-eyed man slowly scanned the kneeling wolves surrounding the chamber before his gaze finally settled on Selena. Emotion flickered briefly across his face, relief. Then his eyes shifted toward Vanessa, and instantly the atmosphere changed. The guardian's voice echoed through the hall like distant thunder. The liar stands beside the broken alpha. Vanessa staggered backward immediately. Fear consumed her expression entirely now. I do not know who you are, she snapped weakly. You cannot accuse me without proof. Guardian stared at her silently. Then he raised one hand. Silver energy erupted across the hall instantly. The air itself shimmered violently. And suddenly images appeared above the throne platform, memories, living memories suspended in moonlight. The entire gathering gasped in shock. Vanessa's face drained completely of color. But it was too late. Everyone could see now. The first memory unfolded clearly before the entire kingdom. Vanessa secretly stealing royal documents from Damon's chambers before planting them among Selena's belongings. Whispers exploded through the hall. Another memory appeared instantly afterward. Vanessa manipulating warriors with lies, convincing them Selena envied her position and planned betrayal against the pack. Then another. Vanessa deliberately provoking Selena emotionally before pretending innocence whenever Damon appeared. And finally, the exile. The truth the entire kingdom never saw. Vanessa bribing witnesses, threatening servants, smiling secretly while Selena cried alone beyond the territory gates. The palace hall erupted into chaos. Rage spread instantly through the pack. You lied to us, she framed Selena. She destroyed the true Luna. Vanessa shook violently now while tears filled her eyes. Listen to me. But nobody listened anymore, not even Damon. The Blackwood Alpha stared at the floating memories with complete devastation spreading across his face. Every manipulation, every lie. Every cruel betrayal, all of it revealed publicly before the entire kingdom. And suddenly Damon understood the full horror of what he had done. Selena did not lose her future because she was weak. He handed her suffering directly to the woman who hated her most. The realization nearly crushed him beneath its weight. Vanessa grabbed Damon desperately. You have to stop this, she whispered frantically. They are turning against me. Slowly looked at her, and for the first time since they met. Vanessa saw disgust inside his eyes, pure, cold, absolute. He pulled his arm away immediately. You destroyed her, he said hoarsely. The words sliced through Vanessa harder than any weapon. She cried desperately. I did all of this for us. For us? Damon's voice darkened dangerously. You humiliated my true mate before the entire kingdom. The entire hall fell silent again, because Damon finally said the words openly, true mate. Regret flooded visibly through his face, while his eyes shifted toward Selena standing quietly beside Kael beneath the silver moonlight. Selena looked nothing like the broken girl Vanessa once mocked. She stood tall now, calm, powerful enough that even ancient wolves bowed instinctively before her presence. And somehow, that quiet strength hurt Vanessa more than vengeance ever could. Because Selena no longer needed to fight for respect. She already possessed it. The pack began turning away from Vanessa one by one. Warriors who once defended her stepped back with visible disgust. Noblewomen whispered angrily behind trembling hands. Even the elders looked at her with disappointment heavy enough to suffocate the room. Vanessa's perfect world collapsed completely within minutes. Fear twisted violently across her face as she realized there was nowhere left to hide. Then suddenly she looked toward Selena. Real hatred surfaced openly now. You think you won? Vanessa snapped hysterically. Everything was always about you. Remained silent. That calmness enraged Vanessa even more. You had the pack's sympathy. You had Damon's attention even when he rejected you. And now you return with power while everyone worships you like some goddess. Silver energy pulsed softly around Selena. Still she said nothing. Vanessa's voice cracked emotionally. I was tired of standing behind you. The confession echoed painfully through the hall, because beneath all the cruelty, jealousy had always controlled Vanessa completely, not strength, not ambition, envy. Selena finally stepped forward slowly. Moonlight reflected across her silver armor while ancient power moved quietly through the chamber around her. When she spoke, her voice remained calm. You destroyed yourself long before I returned. Vanessa froze. The simplicity of the words shattered what little composure she still carried, because deep down she knew Selena was right. The pack no longer looked at Vanessa with admiration, only betrayal. And the punishment hurt far worse because it came from the very people she manipulated for years. Damon lowered his head slowly. Shame darkened every part of him now. He turned toward Selena again. Pain nearly visible beneath his skin. I cannot undo what I did to you, he whispered. Selena looked at him quietly. And for the first time all night, a faint sadness crossed her expression. Not love, not longing, grief for the person she once was before he destroyed her trust completely. You were supposed to protect me, she said softly. The words nearly broke Damon apart, because she was right again. Mate bonds were sacred, and he failed her in every possible way. Silence spread heavily throughout the hall while Kael remained beside Selena, his presence steady and unwavering through the emotional storm consuming the kingdom around them. Then, unexpectedly, Selena's hand brushed lightly against Kael's tiny movement, yet the effect was immediate. Kael's expression softened instantly, and Selena relaxed. The entire room noticed, especially Damon. The painful realization hit him harder than everything else combined. Selena trusted Kael completely, not because Kael demanded it. Because he earned it. Damon looked away slowly, unable to bear the sight any longer. The guardian stepped forward again then, silver eyes sweeping across the gathering. "The moon goddess has restored balance tonight," he declared powerfully, his gaze settled on Selena. "The kingdoms have their Luna once more." One by one, wolves throughout the hall lowered themselves to one knee again, not forced this time, chosen willingly, respectfully. Selena looked around the kneeling kingdom silently while silver moonlight illuminated the palace around her. Months ago she left this territory shattered and alone. Tonight the same kingdom bowed before her, not because she sought revenge, because she survived long enough to become who she was always destined to be. And standing beside her, Kael looked at Selena not with fear of her power, but pride, quiet, steady, real, the kind of love that protects instead of destroys. Then Kael gently lifted Selena's hand before the entire kingdom, and when their eyes met beneath the silver moonlight, for the first time since the blood moon shattered her heart, Selena finally stopped feeling broken. The most dangerous thing inside the Blackwood Grand Hall was no longer Selena's power. It was Damon's regret. Everyone could feel it spreading through the chamber like slow poison, while silver moonlight flooded the palace walls around them. Wolves remained kneeling across the marble floor beneath the presence of the awakened lunar queen, yet the atmosphere had changed again. The fear was gone. Now only emotion remained, heavy, painful, unavoidable. Vanessa stood abandoned near the throne platform while whispers of betrayal continued spreading through the gathering. No one rushed to comfort her anymore. No one defended her lies. She had lost everything. But Damon barely noticed. His entire world had narrowed to one person standing beneath the silver glow filling the hall, Selena. The woman he once rejected publicly now stood before kingdoms as the last daughter of the moon goddess bloodline. And somehow, that was not the part destroying him most. It was the realization that she no longer looked at him with love. Damon felt it every time her eyes passed over him calmly. No longing, no desperation, no fragile hope waiting to be chosen, only distance. The absence of her affection hollowed him more completely than any punishment ever could. Kael remained beside Selena silently, though his presence alone radiated warning throughout the hall. The Northern Alpha watched Damon carefully now, silver eyes unreadable beneath the flickering moonlight, not threatened, prepared. Because Kael understood exactly what regret could make powerful men do, Damon slowly stepped forward anyway. The movement instantly tightened the atmosphere throughout the chamber. Several warriors stiffened. Kael's jaw hardened almost invisibly, but Selena simply watched, calm, steady. That calmness made Damon's chest ache violently. Because months ago Selena would have trembled emotionally under his attention. Now she stood before him stronger than his kingdom itself. Damon stopped only a few feet away from her. And suddenly, the powerful alpha who once humiliated her before an entire pack looked exhausted, broken by his own choices. His voice came quietly at first. "I spent months convincing myself I did the right thing." Silence filled the hall immediately. Even the wind outside seemed to still. Damon swallowed hard while shame darkened his expression. "I told myself you were too emotional, too weak, too sensitive to become Luna." Every word sounded heavier than the last. But the truth, his voice nearly failed him. "The truth is that I was blinded by pride," remained motionless. Yet something flickered faintly inside her eyes hearing those words, not forgiveness. Pain remembered. Damon looked down briefly before continuing. "Vanessa praised my ego. She made me feel powerful." Bitterness entered his voice now. "You challenged me without realizing it." His eyes lifted toward Selena again. "You cared enough to tell me when I was wrong. You worried about the pack. You protected people even when they mocked you." Regret twisted visibly through his face. "And instead of valuing your heart," his breathing became uneven, "I punished you for it." Entire hall remained silent, listening to the Blackwood Alpha unravel publicly beneath the weight of truth. Damon's wolf felt restless beneath his skin now, not aggressive, mourning, because instinct understood what his pride realized too late. He rejected the one soul meant for him, and fate would never return what he destroyed willingly. "I see everything clearly now," Damon whispered hoarsely. Too clearly. His gaze drifted briefly toward Kael standing beside Selena, and pain crossed his face instantly. Because Kael possessed something Damon lost forever, her trust. That realization nearly shattered him completely. Damon lowered himself slowly onto one knee before Selena. Gasps spread immediately across the hall, an alpha kneeling willingly before the woman he once rejected. The symbolism alone carried enormous weight. Vanessa stared in horror while tears streamed silently down her face now. But Damon no longer cared who watched. Pride had already ruined enough. His voice broke slightly. "I made the biggest mistake of my life beneath that blood moon." The confession echoed through the chamber like grief itself. "I destroyed the only person who ever loved me without conditions." Selena's chest tightened painfully hearing those words, because once upon a time, they were true. She loved Damon completely, even during the cruelty, even during the neglect, even while slowly losing herself trying to become worthy in his eyes, and remembering that girl hurt more than she expected. Damon looked up at her desperately now. "I cannot sleep without remembering your face the night I exiled you." His voice trembled openly. "I hear the bond breaking every single night." Several wolves lowered their heads uncomfortably. The sound of a mate bond snapping was rare, painful enough to scar wolves emotionally for life. And Damon carried that scar now, just like Selena once did. "I thought power mattered more than love," Damon admitted quietly. "I thought choosing Vanessa made me stronger." A bitter laugh escaped him. "I have never felt weaker than I do standing here now." Selena watched him silently. Moonlight shimmered softly across her silver armor while the ancient mark beneath her wrist glowed faintly against her skin. She looked beautiful, but not fragile anymore. Damon noticed that too. The sadness inside her no longer controlled her. She survived it, transformed it, turned heartbreak into strength powerful enough to command kingdoms. And Damon hated himself for only recognizing her worth after another man protected what he discarded. Kael stepped slightly closer beside Selena again, small movement, instinctive. Yet Damon noticed how naturally Selena relaxed near him, not fearfully, safely. That sight cut deeper than anything else, because Selena once looked at Damon that way. Before he ruined it, his voice lowered again. "If there is any part of you that remembers what we were," hope flickered desperately through his expression, "please forgive me." The hall fell completely still. Everyone waited. Even Vanessa stopped breathing. Selena stared down at Damon quietly while emotions moved silently behind her silver eyes. Memories flooded her mind without warning. The rejection ceremony, the loneliness, crying alone beneath freezing rain after exile. Begging herself to survive after the mate bond shattered. Then different memories followed. Kael teaching her how to fight. Kael listening without judgment. Kael standing beside her every single time she doubted herself, protecting her without demanding ownership in return. The difference between both men became painfully obvious. One destroyed her when she loved him. The other helped rebuild her when she hated herself. Selena finally spoke, softly, calmly. And somehow that calmness hurt Damon more than rage ever could. "I forgive you." Hope flashed instantly across Damon's face, then Selena continued. "I do not love you anymore." The words landed like execution. Silence crushed the hall completely afterward. Damon stared at her as though the ground vanished beneath him. Selena's expression softened faintly, not with romance, compassion. "For a long time," she whispered, "I believed losing you meant losing everything." Her eyes glistened slightly beneath the moonlight now. "But losing you forced me to find myself." Damon's chest tightened violently, because he finally understood. Selena no longer needed his love to feel whole, and nothing hurt more than realizing someone survived the damage you caused them. Tears filled Damon's eyes despite every attempt to stop them. His voice came out broken. "There is nothing left between us." Selena looked at him one final time, then slowly she turned toward Kael. The northern alpha met her gaze quietly while unspoken emotion passed between them, powerful enough for the entire hall to feel trust, protection, love born from healing instead of pain. Selena's fingers slipped gently into Kael's hand, and in that exact moment Damon received his answer without another word. He had not merely lost Selena, he lost the future that should have belonged to them both, forever. The most powerful moment in the Blackwood Grand Hall came after the shouting ended, not during the public humiliation, not when the lies were exposed, not even when the kingdom knelt before Selena beneath the silver light of the moon goddess. It happened during the silence afterward, because silence reveals what people truly are once pride, fear, and performance disappear. The enormous hall remained frozen beneath cold moonlight pouring through shattered palace windows. Silver flames flickered softly against ancient stone walls while hundreds of wolves stood motionless, emotionally exhausted from everything they had witnessed. Vanessa remained near the throne platform, trembling beneath the weight of public disgrace. Damon still knelt several feet away from Selena, shattered by regret powerful enough to hollow every trace of arrogance from his expression. And at the center of it all stood Selena herself, the rejected Omega who returned as something greater than a queen. Yet despite possessing enough power to destroy everyone who hurt her, she had not used it. That unsettled the kingdom more than violence ever could. Because wolves understood anger, they understood revenge. But restraint belonged to rulers. Kael watched Selena carefully beneath the silver glow surrounding the hall. His expression remained calm as always, though emotion moved quietly behind his silver eyes while he studied the woman standing beside him. He could feel the conflict inside her, not hatred. Pain finally reaching its end, Selena's breathing remained uneven despite her composed expression. The memories surrounding this palace still lingered heavily inside her chest. Every hallway carried echoes of loneliness. Every throne room pillar reminded her of humiliation. This kingdom once watched her suffer silently without lifting a hand to protect her. And now, the same kingdom bowed before her. Fate possessed a cruel sense of irony. A cold wind drifted through the broken palace entrance while distant thunder rolled across the mountains beyond Blackwood territory. The storm had not passed yet, neither had the tension. Because everyone inside the hall waited for Selena's decision now. Punishment, mercy, revenge. No one knew what the awakened lunar queen would choose. Kael slowly stepped beside her then, close enough for only Selena to hear his next words clearly. You can destroy them if you wish. The statement sent visible unease through the gathering immediately, not because Kael sounded encouraging, because everyone knew he meant it. If Selena demanded vengeance tonight, entire kingdoms would obey her. Damon looked up instantly. Fear crossed his face for the first time all evening. Not fear for himself, for Selena, because part of him still remembered the gentle woman who once cried after accidentally injuring wolves during training. And now that same woman possessed power capable of leveling territories. Kael's gaze remained fixed on Selena. You owe this kingdom nothing, he continued quietly. The words wrapped heavily around her chest, because they were true. Blackwood territory gave Selena pain far more often than kindness. Kael's voice lowered further. You can punish every person who stood silent while you suffered. Several wolves visibly stiffened throughout the hall. Guilt spread across many faces instantly. Selena noticed. The warriors who laughed during the rejection ceremony. The servants who whispered insults behind her back. The elders who ignored Vanessa's manipulation because it felt politically convenient. They all looked afraid now, not merely of her strength, of judgment. Kael studied Selena carefully before speaking again. That single word shifted the atmosphere completely. Selena slowly turned toward him. Kael's silver eyes softened slightly. You can walk away from this place stronger than all of them. The hall fell utterly silent. Even Damon stopped breathing. Because suddenly everyone understood the true choice standing before Selena tonight. Not power, not revenge. Identity. What kind of ruler would she become? Selena looked slowly around the grand hall. The same palace where she once felt invisible now waited for her decision with terrified anticipation. And strangely, she no longer felt anger. The hatred burned out somewhere between exile and survival, between heartbreak and healing. She remembered crying alone beneath freezing mountains, believing her life had ended after Damon rejected her. Now standing here again, that girl felt distant, almost like another person entirely. Selena's eyes shifted toward Vanessa. Her sister looked broken beneath the weight of exposure and humiliation. Fear hollowed her expression while tears stained her face openly now. Months ago, Selena dreamed of this moment constantly, dreamed about revenge. About making Vanessa feel the same helplessness she once endured. But standing here now, the satisfaction never came, because revenge could not return stolen years. It could not heal loneliness, and it certainly could not erase the woman Selena used to be. Damon still knelt silently nearby, destroyed by remorse heavy enough to bend even an alpha's pride completely. Selena looked at him quietly for several seconds. Then she finally understood something important. His regret was already punishment. A lifetime of knowing he rejected his true queen willingly. A lifetime of remembering another man cherished the woman he failed to value. Nothing Selena could do would hurt him more than that truth already did. The realization brought unexpected peace. The silver mark beneath her wrist glowed softly, warm, steady, as though the moon goddess herself waited for her answer. Selena inhaled slowly before stepping forward. Every wolf inside the hall straightened instinctively. The air itself seemed to still around her. Then finally she spoke. "I spent too much of my life begging people to see my worth." Her calm voice echoed through the palace beautifully. "I believed revenge would heal the parts of me they broke." Deepened throughout the chamber, Selena's silver eyes moved across the kneeling wolves carefully. Pain does not disappear simply because others begin suffering too. Several elders lowered their heads emotionally. Even Kael watched her differently now, not with surprise, admiration. Selena's voice strengthened. "This kingdom taught me cruelty, betrayal, rejection." Her gaze shifted briefly toward Damon and Vanessa. "The North taught me something greater." Then she looked directly at Kael. The softness entering her expression changed the atmosphere instantly. Strength without dignity becomes tyranny. Kael's eyes darkened with quiet emotion hearing those words, because he understood exactly what Selena had become in that moment, not merely powerful, worthy. Selena turned back toward the gathering. "I will not rule through vengeance." Relief spread visibly across parts of the hall. Others looked ashamed, because mercy from someone they once destroyed felt heavier than punishment. Selena lifted her chin slightly. "Vanessa will answer for her crimes according to the ancient laws." Vanessa collapsed emotionally at those words, sobbing openly now, not because Selena screamed, because she did not. Calm justice frightened guilty people far more than rage ever could. Selena continued. "Blackwood territory will remain under Damon's rule," spread instantly across the gathering. Even Damon looked stunned, but Selena's voice hardened slightly then. The hall tightened again. "You will rebuild the lives your pride destroyed." Damon lowered his head immediately. "I will." Selena studied him quietly. "You will protect your people instead of your ego." Shame crossed Damon's face again. "Yes. You will never allow another wolf to suffer publicly while the pack remains silent." Emotion cracked through Damon's voice now. "I swear it." Selena nodded once, and somehow that simple gesture carried more authority than any alpha command ever spoken inside the palace. The kingdom could feel it too. Respect spread naturally throughout the hall now. Not fear-driven submission, genuine reverence, because true power stood before them wearing mercy instead of cruelty. Kael stepped beside Selena again, closer this time. His presence wrapped around her steadily while silver moonlight reflected across both figures standing together at the center of the ancient hall. The contrast between them felt undeniable now. Kael looked at Selena like a man proud of the woman she became, not because she chose him, because she chose herself first. Damon noticed that too. And strangely, the realization finally brought him peace alongside the pain, because for the first time since the blood moon Selena truly looked happy, not dependent, not desperate for approval, whole. And he understood then that love was never supposed to break someone into obedience. Real love protects growth. Kael had done that for her. Damon never did. The storm outside finally began fading. Moonlight spilled brighter across the palace floor while wolves throughout the hall slowly lowered themselves to one knee again before Selena, not commanded, willingly, respectfully. This time the gesture carried no fear, only honor. Selena looked around the kingdom that once rejected her, and instead of destroying it, she rose above it. That choice made her more powerful than revenge ever could. The kingdom felt different beneath the moonlight after Selena chose mercy, lighter, quieter. As though the land itself finally exhaled after years of hidden darkness poisoning the pack from within. Silver flames burned steadily once again along the towering palace walls, while the storm clouds above Blackwood territory slowly drifted apart, revealing an enormous full moon hanging across the night sky. No wolf inside the grand hall dared speak, not because they feared Selena anymore, because they were witnessing history. The rejected Omega, who once walked through these halls invisible and broken, now stood at the center of the kingdom, crowned by nothing except dignity, strength, and earned respect. And somehow, that made her feel untouchable. Selena remained still beneath the silver glow pouring through the shattered palace windows, while hundreds of wolves knelt respectfully around her. Yet despite the overwhelming admiration filling the hall, her attention slowly shifted toward only one person, Kael. The Northern Alpha stood beside her quietly as moonlight reflected across the dark silver patterns woven into his ceremonial armor. Unlike every other powerful man Selena had known, Kael never looked at her as something fragile to possess or control. He looked at her as an equal. That difference changed everything. For months he stood beside her without demanding trust before she was ready to give it. He protected her without making her feel weak, listened without judgment, waited without pressure. And somewhere between survival and healing, Selena stopped feeling alone. Kael noticed her looking at him. A soft silence passed between them instantly, the kind of silence carrying emotion deeper than words. Around them, the kingdom watched carefully. Even Damon lifted his gaze slowly from the marble floor, pain flickering across his face as realization settled deeper inside him. Because for the first time, he finally understood what true devotion looked like. Not obsession, not pride, not dominance disguised as love, steady loyalty, the kind that remains during broken moments instead of disappearing when things become difficult. Kael took one slow step towards Selena, then another. The atmosphere inside the hall shifted immediately. Ancient energy stirred softly through the palace while silver moonlight intensified around them unnaturally. Several elders exchanged stunned glances. They could feel it, the bond. Not broken like Selena's past connection with Damon, something far older, far stronger. Selena's heartbeat quickened slightly as Kael stopped directly before her. For the first time all evening, the calm Northern Alpha looked emotionally vulnerable, not weak, honest. And somehow that honesty affected her more deeply than grand declarations ever could. Kael studied her quietly before speaking. "You survived everything meant to destroy you." His deep voice echoed softly through the silent hall. "You walked through betrayal without becoming cruel." Emotion tightened subtly inside his expression. "You were rejected by people too blind to understand your worth." Selena's chest ached hearing the truth spoken so gently. Kael continued, "Despite all of it," his silver eyes held hers completely now, "you still chose compassion." Silver mark beneath Selena's wrist glowed warmly again, not painfully, like her soul responding to his voice. Kael slowly lowered himself onto one knee before her. The entire kingdom gasped, not because an alpha knelt, because everyone inside the hall understood what it meant. This was not submission, it was devotion, respect powerful enough to humble pride willingly. Damon's expression shattered completely watching the scene unfold. Because Kael was giving Selena everything Damon once denied her publicly, honor. Kael lowered his head briefly before lifting his gaze toward her once more. Moonlight illuminated his silver eyes beautifully while the palace remained breathlessly silent around them. Then finally, he spoke the words that changed everything. "Queen." Selena's breath caught softly. Kael extended his hand toward her slowly, not demanding, offering, "Stand beside me." Moment those words left his mouth, the bond ignited. Silver light exploded violently throughout the grand hall. Gasps echoed instantly across the chamber as ancient lunar energy surged around Selena and Kael like living moonfire. The palace floor trembled beneath the force while glowing silver symbols spread rapidly across the marble beneath their feet. Every flame inside the hall rose higher. Wind swept through the kingdom. And somewhere beyond the mountains, wolves began howling, one after another, entire territories responding instinctively to the awakening bond. Selena felt it instantly, not pain, not the sharp emotional change she once felt with Damon. This connection wrapped around her soul gently. Warmth flooded through every broken place inside her chest, while emotions poured between them without fear or control. Safety, trust, love, real love, the kind that did not demand she shrink herself to deserve it. Tears filled Selena's eyes unexpectedly as the bond settled deeper inside her heart. Kael felt them too, every scar, every lonely night, every moment she believed herself unworthy of love. And instead of pulling away from her pain, he accepted it. The silver light surrounding them burst upward through the shattered palace ceiling, illuminating the night sky above Blackwood territory in radiant lunar fire. Outside the kingdom, wolves across distant lands lifted their heads toward the heavens in shock as glowing silver light spread across the stars themselves. "The moon goddess has chosen," one elder whispered emotionally. Inside the hall, hundreds of wolves bowed lower instinctively while ancient energy continued pulsing around Selena and Kael. But Selena barely noticed any of it, because for the first time in her life she felt completely seen. Kael rose slowly to his feet while the glowing mate bond shimmered softly between them like strands of living silver woven through moonlight itself. His hand remained extended toward her, waiting, not forcing, giving her the choice freely. Selena looked at him quietly while tears glistened beneath her lashes. Then slowly, she placed her hand in his. The bond exploded brighter instantly. A wave of silver energy swept across the kingdom, powerful enough to shake the palace walls, while moonlight flooded the hall in dazzling brilliance. The crowd erupted emotionally. Some wolves cried openly. Others lowered themselves completely to the floor in reverence. Even hardened warriors looked overwhelmed by the ancient magic unfolding before them. And standing at the center of it all, Selena smiled. Not the fragile smile she once used to hide pain. A real one, soft, peaceful, free. Damon closed his eyes briefly as heartbreak crushed through him completely, because the final truth became unavoidable now. Selena did not merely survive losing him. She found something infinitely greater afterward, a love that healed instead of harmed, a bond built from trust instead of fear. And while Damon watched silently from the ruins of his own mistakes, the woman he once rejected stepped fully into the destiny waiting for her all along, not as a broken Omega, not as an abandoned mate, but as the most powerful Luna the kingdoms had seen in generations. And beside her stood the man worthy of loving her. The kingdom had never seen a night like this before. Silver light covered the mountains surrounding Blackwood territory, while thousands of wolves gathered beneath the enormous moon hanging over the royal palace. Torches burned across the kingdom like rivers of fire, stretching through the darkness as warriors, elders, nobles, and neighboring alphas filled the massive ceremonial grounds waiting for the final coronation to begin. No one spoke loudly. The atmosphere carried something heavier than celebration: history. Cold wind swept through the enormous banners hanging from the palace towers, while moonlight reflected against silver armor lining the royal stairway leading toward the throne platform. And at the center of everything sat the throne once meant for someone else. Months ago the kingdom believed Vanessa would rule beside Damon. Months ago Selena stood alone in silence while the entire pack laughed at her humiliation beneath the blood moon. Now the same wolves who mocked her waited with lowered heads beneath the return of the lunar queen. The palace doors slowly opened. Instantly, the entire kingdom fell silent. Every torch flickered violently as silver energy spread softly through the air itself. Then Selena appeared. A collective breath swept through the gathering. She no longer resembled the frightened Omega who once hid tears behind trembling smiles. Tonight she looked untouchable. Ancient silver royal armor wrapped elegantly around her figure beneath layers of moonlit fabric embroidered with glowing lunar symbols. A flowing white cape drifted behind her while crystal markings shimmered faintly across her wrists like living moonlight woven into skin. And upon her head rested the crown of Lunaris, the lost royal crown hidden for centuries until the moon goddess bloodline awakened once more. The moment Selena stepped onto the ceremonial stairway, every wolf lowered themselves to one knee, thousands. At once, the sound echoed through the mountains like thunder. Warriors bowed their heads deeply. Alphas from neighboring territories knelt respectfully beside their armies. Even the elders lowered themselves completely before the woman fate had chosen to restore balance across the kingdoms. Not one wolf resisted, because power alone did not command this kind of loyalty. Respect did. Selena walked slowly through the sea of kneeling wolves, while silver moonlight followed her movements unnaturally across the palace grounds, calm, graceful, certain. No fear remained inside her anymore, only strength. Kael stood waiting near the throne platform, dressed in dark ceremonial armor marked with the ancient crest of the northern kingdoms. His silver eyes never left Selena, while quiet emotion softened his usually controlled expression: pride, love, absolute devotion. And unlike Damon months earlier, Kael looked at Selena like the throne beside him had always belonged to her. The realization touched Selena more deeply than she expected, because for the first time in her life she no longer felt like she had to fight to deserve love. Kael stepped forward as she approached the throne platform. The kingdom watched breathlessly while moonlight intensified around them both. Then Kael lowered himself onto one knee before the entire kingdom again. Gasps spread softly through the gathering despite everyone already witnessing his devotion earlier inside the palace hall. But this moment felt even more powerful, because now the entire world watched. Kael lifted his gaze toward Selena slowly. "Luna," he said quietly. His voice carried effortlessly across the silent kingdom. "You walked through betrayal without losing your heart." Emotion tightened subtly inside his expression. "You survived suffering powerful enough to destroy weaker souls." The silver mate bond glowing faintly between them illuminated softly beneath the moonlight. "And now," Kael continued, "the kingdom stands stronger because you rose instead of breaking." Selena's eyes shimmered faintly with emotion, not sadness, peace. Kael extended his hand toward the throne beside his own. "Rule beside me." The words wrapped around the kingdom like sacred vows. Selena looked slowly across the massive gathering surrounding the palace, and suddenly, memories flooded her mind one final time. The rejection ceremony, the laughter, the loneliness, the freezing mountains during exile. The nights she cried herself to sleep believing nobody would ever truly choose her. Then different memories followed. Kael teaching her how to trust again, training beneath silver moons, learning her worth, healing slowly beside someone who never demanded she become smaller to be loved. The contrast nearly overwhelmed her, because standing here now she realized something important. Her greatest victory was never revenge. It was surviving long enough to become herself. Selena finally placed her hand into Kael's. Silver light exploded across the kingdom instantly. The sky itself illuminated beneath enormous waves of lunar energy spreading through the clouds above Blackwood territory. Wolves across distant lands lifted their heads toward the heavens as ancient magic rolled through every kingdom at once. Then the crowd erupted. Howls thundered across the mountains. Warriors slammed fists against armor. Elders wept openly. Because the lunar queen had finally claimed her throne, Kael guided Selena gently toward the royal seat standing above the ceremonial grounds. And when she sat upon the throne, the atmosphere changed completely. Power surged through the kingdom like moonlight washing over ancient stone, not violent, protective. The kind of strength that made wolves feel safe instead of afraid. The moon goddess had restored balance at last, and everyone could feel it, far below the throne platform. Damon stood silently among the gathered alphas, alone, no Vanessa beside him, no pride remaining to shield him from the truth, only regret. His eyes remained fixed on Selena while silver light illuminated her face beneath the royal crown she was always destined to wear. And for the first time Damon understood the full weight of what he lost. Not merely a mate, not merely a Luna. He lost the woman history itself would remember. Pain hollowed quietly through his chest while memories replayed endlessly inside his mind. The way Selena once looked at him with unconditional love, the trust he shattered publicly, the future he destroyed with his own arrogance. Now another man stood beside her proudly while the kingdoms bowed willingly before her throne, and Damon could do nothing except watch. because some mistakes could never be undone. Selena's eyes shifted toward him briefly from the throne high above the ceremonial grounds. No hatred remained inside her expression now, only closure, and strangely, that hurt him more than anger ever could. The wind carried softly through the kingdom while silver moonlight covered the palace in radiant glow. Kael stood beside Selena protectively, with one hand resting gently against the throne near hers, not controlling, steady, present. The way real love was always supposed to feel. The crowd slowly lowered themselves again before the throne, while thousands of wolves bowed beneath the return of the lunar queen. And above them, all Selena finally smiled peacefully toward the moonlit sky. The frightened girl abandoned beneath the blood moon was gone forever. In her place stood the most powerful Luna the kingdoms had seen in generations. The same pack that once mocked her now bowed before her throne. And somewhere beneath the silver heavens stretching endlessly above Blackwood territory, history quietly began remembering her name. The girl they once called weak became the Luna history would never forget. Silver light continued glowing across the night sky as the kingdom knelt beneath their queen, and slowly, the story faded into moonlight. Peace never lasts long in kingdoms built on blood. The celebration across Blackwood territory continued deep into the night, while silver moonlight covered the mountains surrounding the palace in radiant glow. Wolves filled the enormous ceremonial grounds below the royal throne platform, their howls echoing endlessly through the kingdom as torches burned like stars across the darkness. Music returned, warriors laughed together again. For the first time in years, the kingdom finally felt united. And at the center of it all, Selena sat upon the lunar throne. The ancient silver crown rested elegantly against her dark hair while glowing moon symbols shimmered softly along the marble beneath her feet. Power moved quietly through the palace around her now, woven naturally into the air itself, as though the kingdom recognized its true queen at last. No fear remained inside her chest anymore, no desperation, no loneliness, only calm strength. Kael stood beside the throne speaking quietly with neighboring alphas while warriors from northern territories celebrated below the palace steps. Yet despite the joy surrounding him, his attention kept drifting back toward Selena constantly, protective instinct, unshakable. Selena noticed every time, and somehow, it still made warmth spread softly through her chest. The mate bond between them pulsed gently beneath the silver moonlight, steady and comforting like a heartbeat finally finding peace after years of pain. Far below the throne platform, Damon stood silently near the edge of the gathering watching the kingdom celebrate Selena's coronation. Alone. The reality still felt surreal to him. Months earlier he stood proudly beside Vanessa believing power belonged in his hands forever. Now the kingdom bowed willingly before the woman he once called weak. And the cruelest part of all, she looked happier without him. Damon lowered his eyes slowly while regret settled deeper into his chest. Some wounds never healed completely. Nearby, wolves whispered stories about Selena already. The moon goddess restored the lunar bloodline. She survived exile and returned stronger than every alpha. They say her power reaches beyond the northern kingdoms. Legends had already begun forming around her name, and Selena had not even ruled for a single night yet. High above the celebration, clouds drifted slowly across the massive moon illuminating Blackwood territory. The storm from earlier had vanished entirely now, replaced by calm silver skies stretching endlessly across the mountains. Everything felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. Selena leaned slightly against the throne while her gaze moved across the kingdom below. The same wolves who once mocked her now celebrated her rise openly. The same palace that once witnessed her humiliation now stood illuminated beneath her reign. Fate had transformed her suffering into something extraordinary. Yet strangely, a faint unease suddenly moved through her chest, small at first, easy to ignore. Then the mark beneath her wrist burned sharply. Selena stiffened instantly. Pain shot through her arm, powerful enough to steal her breath for half a second. The glowing lunar symbol hidden beneath the silver fabric wrapped around her wrist suddenly illuminated brighter than ever before. Not warm this time. Warning, Kael noticed immediately. His expression hardened as he turned toward her. Selena. The celebration continued below, completely unaware of the shift happening near the throne. Selena slowly looked down toward the glowing mark while silver energy pulsed violently beneath her skin. Something felt wrong. The palace air turned colder suddenly. The torches surrounding the ceremonial grounds flickered unnaturally. Then one by one, the wolves below stopped celebrating, because the moonlight changed. Gasps spread quietly throughout the kingdom as the enormous silver moon hanging above Blackwood territory darkened slowly beneath strange shadows moving across its surface. Kael stepped closer instantly. Protective instinct surged through him as his hand moved toward Selena's. The mate bond between them tightened sharply. Unease spread visibly across the surrounding alphas while elders exchanged nervous glances beneath the shifting sky. Selena's breathing slowed. The burning mark pulsed again, harder, and suddenly, a voice whispered inside her mind, ancient, male, cold enough to freeze blood. "You awakened the bloodline." Selena's eyes widened slightly. The voice did not belong to Kael or Damon, or anyone inside the kingdom. This voice felt older than the mountains themselves, older than the throne. Older than the moon goddess stories whispered across wolf territories for centuries. The silver flames surrounding the palace abruptly turned black. Panic erupted below. Warriors reached for weapons immediately while frightened wolves backed away from the throne platform in confusion. Kael's aura exploded protectively around Selena. "Who are you?" he demanded sharply. But Selena barely heard him, because the voice returned again, closer now, more dangerous. "The kingdoms celebrate too early." Burning mark spread silver cracks of light across Selena's wrist. Then slowly, the massive moon above Blackwood territory split with a dark crimson shadow stretching across its center like blood-staining silver light. Fear swept through the gathering instantly. Even the elders looked terrified now. Selena rose slowly from the throne while cold wind roared violently across the palace grounds. Something ancient was awakening, something powerful enough to darken the moon itself. Then finally, the voice whispered one last sentence directly into Selena's soul. "The real war is only beginning." Silver crown atop Selena's head began glowing violently beneath the blackened sky. Kael grabbed her hand instantly. The mate bond ignited sharply between them. And somewhere beyond the distant mountains surrounding Blackwood territory, a monstrous howl echoed through the darkness. Not wolf, something far worse. The kingdom froze in terror. Then suddenly, everything went black.